Total War Pharaoh was announced last week, and today I'm able to share with you some battle gameplay that I was able to record on an early version of the game. So how does it play and what can you expect on the battlefield when October finally rolls around? Let's dive in to find out. On the build we only had the option of playing 3 battles, so I don't have any idea what the campaign gameplay is like yet. The 3 battles were of increasing difficulty, with 2 field battles and 1 massive siege, and in each of them we were playing as Egypt, led by Ramses. Of course, since it's a purely historical game, it means that unit variety wise, we're looking at a selection of men with pointy objects with varying levels of armor and damage. Some archers, javelins, and maybe some cavalry chariots if you're lucky. I know it's because Warhammer has spoiled all other Total War games for me, but unit variety, it's hard to go back sometimes, it's so constrained. One thing I'm sure many people will be happy about is Lords being in bodyguard units rather than single entities. The bodyguards are still very strong units, don't get me wrong, but they're not one-man armies like Warhammer, and if you're not careful, your Lord's entity can still die pretty instantly, leaving your army at a severe disadvantage. They also don't have any magical abilities, so if you're hoping for a truly historical game, then you can rest easy, knowing there's no mischief afoot here. The game also features stances, which is something I pray makes its way over to Warhammer. Seriously, how hard can it be to have spearmen make a phalanx, even if it's just visual? Then again, look at how broken patch 3.1 is, new features probably shouldn't be at the top of anyone's list. We had a few stances to choose from, and they varied between units, with heavier spears having that spear wall, and less armor troops having either advance or surrender territory. And all that really meant was, as the unit fought, they would continue to move forward as the units in front of them died, or move backwards as they took more damage. Its sole bullet was a good way to ensure that action moves in a direction most beneficial to you. As I'm sure you've been able to tell, the UI and everything is very Troy-esque. I obviously can't know for sure, but I would say it's a safe bet that the game is built on the bones of Troy, and there's nothing really wrong with that, as long as they take out the bits that didn't work and keep all the stuff that did. Anyway, onto the battles themselves. Now, I don't know if I'm just built different, but they were pretty damn easy. Don't get me wrong, most preview events like this, where press also get access to the game, are pretty easy, since if you don't play the game for a living, you're going to need to take it easy, otherwise you're going to have a Cuphead situation. But we talked to the devs later, and they told us that the final siege should have been a real challenge, and I basically sat on the walls AFK and won without too much trouble. Also, I realized this just now, but I didn't record any audio from my clips because I'm good at my job. But I can tell you it was very Troy-esque, with nondescript battle noises coming from the fight, making it feel a little bit disconnected, but you know, early access build, yada yada yada. So the first battle was meant to be easy, with a small force on both sides. It was your classic historical. The front lines met in the middle, the ranged move around to try and get shots off and deal actual damage, since ranged are the most powerful units in every Total War game until the end of time, and one thing many people will be happy about is that this battle length feels a lot better. We all know that Warhammer battles end up being more loading time than time spent actually battling. But here I have some recordings breaking the 10-minute mark, and it feels pretty good without being over too quickly, but it also doesn't feel like it's dragging out the battle forever. All in all, the first battle was meant to be so easy, you could control A and move your army in without any other plan. That is directly from the dev's mouth, and honestly, yeah, it was pretty much that easy. The second was a little bit more challenging, with a larger force on both sides, as well as weather effects coming into play. In a feature I'm fairly sure is picked from Troy, but I have played it for about 15 minutes, so I could be wrong. We saw rain and thunder, and they reduced the efficacy of ranged troops, making it quite a slog of a battle to get through without their massive damage output. Getting the correct weather conditions could be for sure a deciding factor in a very close battle, so you'll have to tailor your army build and playstyle somewhat for the climate that you're battling in, which I think will be a pretty cool touch. In this battle, the Lord was on a ranged chariot, and you all know I love chariots so dearly, and I just use them so perfectly. It felt impactful and did some decent damage when I got a couple of charges off, so I don't really have anything to complain about there. This one was a little bit harder since the enemy kept getting into the ranged troops and I had a ton of infantry thrown at me, meaning I really had to blob them up and will away them with the ranged damage, even with the weather debuffs. Another thing I noticed during this battle and the upcoming siege is that the map size really feels good. It's massive. I hate loading into a Warhammer map and having to place my troops single file to fit them all on, but here you could easily have 3 armies on each side for a massive slobber knocker, and you'd have enough room for actual strategy. It was another decent length battle anyway, so nothing else to complain about. And finally the siege, and it was a chunky one. The map had us defending from basically all directions on a, frankly, huge siege map, so honestly the hardest part was getting the camera around to where it was needed. The battle was meant to be the hardest, but honestly I held the walls, and we all know that that can be a cardinal sin, and it just kind of worked. I could beat enemies in melee on the choke point that is the walls, and the ranged units just picked off anything they could get their eyes on, so honestly it was pretty straightforward. I had a couple of units make a break for my capture point, but I just sent my Lord to chase them down and take them out no problem. We also had a chariot unit in this battle, and using that to go outside the walls and harass enemies queuing for the towers was pretty cool on such a massive map where you could do it, and they really couldn't do anything about it. Now, this map also has something that I know will be controversial for the historical fans out there. Now, like any siege, there were several control points, and 2 of them offered morale, which makes sense and is fine from a historical perspective. If your palace is safe, you'll probably feel fairly confident. The third, however, was a temple, and when under your control, it gave nearby units healing per second. Now, it's not map-wide, so it's a little more acceptable, but healing mid-battle is still a little bit of a weird move for a historical game, if you ask me. Plus, are you really going to move units to the temple for a little R&R mid-battle? I'm not really sure what to think about this feature, so sound off in the comments below what exactly you think. Aside from that weirdness, however, the map is really massive, and while pathing was a little bit wonky as it always is, it felt pretty good to be fighting on a siege map that looks like an actual place where people could live. Another great change was that the units have to go to specific points to exit the walls instead of just teleporting down. Honestly, thank you CA Sophia. That shit is so annoying. Add on no arse ladders, so units have to use towers. I mean, why is it such a unique thing for Total War games? I'm fine with ladders as a buildable, but every unit carrying them around just in case is just so beyond stupid, so thank you for making that change. Let it be in all Total War games, because arse ladders are dumb. Enemy AI used siege equipment well to get onto the walls and didn't rush units in all at once, instead send them up in waves, and the same for getting through the gates. We still have enemies retreating into a settlement, but I think if they got rid of that, they'd also need to get rid of the Total War title, since it wouldn't really be a game in the series without it. All in all, the 3 battles felt fine. Now, I'm not really a battle enthusiast. Campaign is for sure where I get most of my enjoyment, so I'll be a lot more excited to get my hands on that, but I can't say I didn't enjoy playing the battles. They were a good pace without being too fast or too slow. Basically all the changes that have been made, I liked, like stances and siege engines. So overall, I'm relatively hopeful for Total War Pharaoh, at least on the battle side. Now, we're going to have to see how the DLC and the cosmetic stuff works out, as well as if they fully commit to the historical setting, as well as how the campaign gameplay is, but from a purely battle perspective in these 3 battles, it was a decent time. Like I said, let me know what you think of these battles and everything that you've seen here today in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Total War content, then check out this video for my full ranking of every single faction in Warhammer 3.